The death of an industry. Hollywood is dying. Hollywood is dying because it's losing its creative juices and its originality. Do you remember when movies used to be movies? Or when we were kids and how excited we were to get our popcorn and get our drinks and just enjoy our time at the movie theaters? Well, those days are long gone. Because Hollywood, over the years, has become void of creativity and originality. But why? Why do you ask? Before we get to the why, let's start with the when. We're going to go back to 2016. Now, this isn't the exact beginning of Hollywood's decline, but it's, however, one of the most impactful years that contributed to it. This is the year of Ghostbusters 2016. It was a reboot with an all-female cast to replace the original male cast. Now, the original Ghostbusters film was from 1984. It was an excellent film through and through, which is now a cinematic classic. It was original, it was well acted, it was well written. All three of these concepts, the remake lacked.
It's a class 4 operation.
My name is Erin Gilbert, Doctor of Particle Physics at...
But what the reboot did consist of was three things. It had a weak plot, it had weak writing, and it had no narrative direction. It was also coupled together by four of the top comedians at the time: Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones. All four of these women were solid choices because of their popularity and their success at the time of filming. If you want to reboot or remake a movie, you go get the top talent. That's how you brand. That's how you reach out. That's how you get influence. But having the top talent wasn't enough to save this film, maybe not the franchise. The actresses were also allowed to ad-lib most of their scenes without any direction.
Holtzman, come on.
The hat is too much, right? Is it the wig or the hat?
Any direction whatsoever. And this killed the movie. It suffered heavily because of it. The movie's budget was $144 million. The box office gross was only $229 million. Overall, the film made $85 million. Now, it was a film that was a remake of an original, a 1984 classic, and it roughly costed about $30 million to make. It grossed $295 million. The remake is, needless to say, it was a complete and utter box office flop. But that didn't stop Hollywood. They didn't take a step back and take a look and see, hey, what did we do wrong? Or ask themselves, how can we do things better? There was absolutely no self-reflection in the industry at this point. If anything, this caused Hollywood to decide to double down on the idea of rebooting and remaking original films that were classics. Then you have Charlie's Angels of 2019. This was a remake of a remake. And it goes to show you again how Hollywood has no originality. This film grossed $73 million with a budget of around $55 million. Needless to say, this was also another box office flop. Moviegoers want to have new experiences, but all we keep getting are these reboots and remakes that do not stand up to the original films in any way, shape, or form. These films, quote unquote, the industry would say, have been remade for a new audience. But who asked for these? No one asked for these films to be redone. They were good then, and they're good now. Let them stay in history and let them stay great. Now, this wouldn't be a bad thing if these films were actually good. But they're not. That's the truth. They're utter trash. Now, this just continues to show you how Hollywood is void of all creativity. Reboots and remakes can be good if they're done right. Here are a few examples, right? Planet of the Apes, 2011. The Punisher, Daredevil. Both of these are Netflix originals. Or not really originals, but Netflix shows. Judge Dredd from 2012. Mad Max, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. Now, we're going to look at Mad Max Fury Road. This showed you how you can have a strong female lead and not infringe on what the original concept of the film and its history was. Because Charlize Theron killed that as Furiosa. But Hollywood also has this thing about strong female leads. There's quite a few strong female leads that already existed in the industry. Sigourney Weaver's Ripley, the #1 badass that started it all. Now, don't even forget about Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider in the past, but you still had Carrie Fisher from the Star Wars franchises. You have the OG, Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton. But Hollywood thinks that we didn't have strong female leads in the past. Now, all of these were done really well, this list of reboots that I've just listed off. They were done well across the board. They were well written, they had great plot, and they had great narrative direction, and they were well acted. The problem with Hollywood is that they are forcing diversity in films by rebooting and remaking original concepts instead of creating original films that are narratively compelling, that have great stories and great, basically casting for one thing. I've seen plenty of movies that just good script, good actor, just didn't fit the role. Just casting is important. But the current state of Hollywood is basically a graveyard filled with movie flops. From RoboCop, The Mummy, Terminator Genesis, Fantastic Four, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters and Charlie's Angels, and Terminator Dark Fate, which was a reboot of the franchise, which completely destroyed T1 and T2. T2 is by far, hands down, one of the greatest sequels we've ever gotten in the film industry. It is one of the films that, if not, was just as good as the original, and possibly, I'd say, surpassed it. You know, these films are just to name a few of films that Hollywood just dumped on, right? The list can go on and on, you know, but Hollywood can't seem to help themselves from destroying franchises from the past.
Chill out, dickwad.
You know, there is also rumors floating around right now that they want to reboot Back to the Future.
No, God! No! No!
For the love of God, please don't. Please don't. Let this film stay great. Let this film stay in the past. Now that we got the when covered, let's talk a little bit about the why. And there's two things: diversity and inclusion. Those are two simple things, two simple concepts, but Hollywood keeps messing them up. Diversity is the representation of different people in an organization. And inclusion is just the ensurement that everyone has an equal opportunity to contribute. Both are simple concepts. But why does Hollywood continue to fail at it? And I'd say the answer is twofold. On one hand, you have the industry continuing to reboot older films that already have loyal and loving fan bases. They reboot these franchises just to interject a diverse change, whether it's a race swap or a gender swap, all for the sake of diversity, without taking into account that the original films was narratively created and structured around the main character within that world. And then you have, on the other hand, the diverse characters being dropped into a world that was, like I said, written and created for someone else. So the character, it feels out of place. They feel flat, especially when you compare them to the original. And these new characters usually don't compare. They're not as compelling as the original, because the original characters were woven into a world and they were woven into a story from creation. Reboots and remakes will always be fighting an uphill battle because they don't compare. They can't compare. What we need is new ideas, original ideas, creative ideas. As a filmmaker, there's 7 key elements that make a great story. Concept. Concept is the idea for the character and the film. And it needs to be fresh and it needs to be well-rounded. Then you have the plot. The plot is the sequence of events that tell the story. And then you have storytelling. Storytelling is just the framing of the plot. Sometimes you can get storytelling and plot confused, but they're 2 different things. The dialogue, the conversations between characters and the cast, they need to feel natural. They need to be compelling. And then you're gonna have your character or characters. They all need to feel real. They all need to feel alive. I've seen so many films that had characters that I can't relate to because they don't seem real. I can't empathize with them. I can't sympathize with them. I can't put myself in their shoes because they do not seem real. And you have theme. The theme, this is what holds your film together. It's what gives your film purpose. But your purpose also has to be clear to the audience so they can consume and they can understand. And then you have writing. You can't appreciate the story if you cannot understand the writing. Hollywood continues to fail at this. This list of 7 things are more focused on the actual screenplay side of things and not the actual filmmaking process. But as we all know, the problem isn't with the filmmaking process. It lies actually within the writing and character development, especially when it comes to implementing diversity into your story. You have to take these things into account. Taking a main character from a past movie and interjecting a diverse change in its place, it just feels lazy to me. But crafting a world around a new character with a new story that's well written, that's good. That's the key to success. For some time now, Hollywood has done this over and over to no success, but they cannot understand that this is not working for them. Some might say people don't go see new films. People don't go read new stories. But I beg to differ. If new films were created with care and focus alongside creating a compelling world with characters to grow and thrive in, people will go see it. People will go see it. But nowadays, everything feels so heavy-handed and forced from our societal acts pushed into these films. This is the turnoff for your general audience. When you have writers telling fans of films and fans of franchises, if you don't like my politics, then don't buy my books. If you don't like my politics, then don't watch my films. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? The answer is people won't go see or read any of the media that you're putting out. The average person doesn't go to the movies or read these books to be preached to or lectured to. They consume the media to be entertained. That is the goal of Hollywood, is to entertain. But don't get me wrong, you can have a political message in a film or a story, but it has to have these compelling things. It has to have these 7 key concepts, which is concept, plot, storytelling, dialogue, character, theme, and writing. I don't know where we're gonna go from here with Hollywood, but it's worth everything to stick around and ride it out and see. I'm Lincoln, this is the RPG Show, and I'll see you guys in the next one.